Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 719, and today's date is July 17th, 2015, and the title of this episode is, What's the Real Agenda Behind the Chattanooga Shooting? Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. Tomorrow, which is Saturday, I'll be uploading an interview with Jason Burak. He's from Wall Street to Main Street, and if you're on the X22report.com alert system, you will get an email if you signed up to the X22 Report Spotlight channel on YouTube. You should get an email from YouTube, but if not, you can go right to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight, and you can check for that video, or you can come right over to the X22report.com site. You will see the interview on the right-hand side. What I do is I place them on the sidebar on the right-hand side, and you can watch it from there. You also have links there to go right to the channel if you want to. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand that there are other nations that have to approve the Greek bailout. And right now we see that Germany, they voted 439 to 119 to approve the latest Greek bailout. And we can see right now the IMF, Christine Lagarde, has said restructuring Greece's debt needs to form an essential part of any deal, because what they have right now, this deal they put together, it can't work, and it's going to bankrupt Greece. I mean, Greece is pretty much bankrupt, but it's going to destroy Greece, and they know this. And if this happens, the people, they realize what's going to happen here. They realize the people are going to say, okay, enough's enough. They will throw out the Syriza party. They will turn towards Russia, and they know this. And this is why they're trying to stop it. We see Tspiras already. He is reshuffling the government. On Friday, he reshuffled his government, and we can see already those who voted against the bailout, well, he's letting those people go. He ditched the energy minister. He also ditched the minister of defense, and he's bringing in those people that will work with the central bankers. Of course, this is what the central bankers wanted. We've heard a lot of information coming out of Greece that, the banks are going to be open on Friday. They're going to not open on Friday. They're going to open on Monday. And now we're getting information that, guess what? The banks will not reopen on Monday. Because to get this deal going, the elites want their money first. They don't want people running to the banks taking their money out, because you know this is what's going to happen. And we can see at this point in time, we don't know when these banks are actually going to really open. And thank God a lot of the people in Greece went to these banks and took out a lot of their own savings, because they knew what happened in Cyprus. And they knew that, we don't want to be Cyprus like those people. And again, this deal is not set in stone. Even though Greece said okay, Germany said okay, other countries have to agree to it, and we're just not there yet. The whole thing could completely fall apart. And most likely, it probably will, because, again, eventually the people are going to say, we have had it. We saw what happened with the referendum. The people said no to the central bankers. That is a clear message that the people are upset and angry and will not take it anymore. If you push people back against the wall, there's no other place to go. If you strip them of their livelihood, their earnings, their home, a way to eat, they have nothing else to lose. And instead of moving backwards against and hitting the wall, they move forward. And this is how revolutions are started. Because people are pushed to the brink and they can't take it anymore. We see here in the United States the illusion is kept alive, but we see information that things are not going well in the economy. I mean, if we look at July's preliminary data, we see that the UMich consumer sentiment has dropped, the biggest miss since 2006. Both current and future hope conditions are deteriorating. People are looking at what's really going on in the economy, and a lot of it is not making sense whatsoever. We see the corporate media, the U.S. government, central bankers, they're pushing the idea that the housing market is incredible. I see it all over the corporate media today. They're saying, look, we see housing surging the most since 2007. Those are the headlines. And when we look closely at this, there was a time that the housing market was made up of single-family homes. But guess what? Those days are long gone. Americans are tapped out. They're not taking out mortgages. They don't have the savings. They don't have the credit. And when they tell you that housing is surging, well, you have to look a little closer. If we look at the single family starts, they've declined from 691,000 to 685,000. This is the lowest level since March. It was the multifamily, also known as rental housing. This is where the permits surged. So what we're seeing right now is that the hedge funds, the investment companies, those people that are getting the free money from the Fed, they're pushing this market higher, blowing up the bubble. They're investing in rental units because they know the American people are tapped out. They can't buy these homes. Let's build rental units. They'll just rent from us. And we can blow up the bubble at the same time. For perspective, we see that rental housing permits, that we are now back to levels last seen since 1990. So every time we've seen a surge in rental units back in 1988 to 1989, a surge in 2007 going to 2008, guess what happened? The market completely dropped to the lowest point ever. And now we have a surge going back to the 1990 levels. And every time this occurs, maybe a couple months later, a year later tops, the market completely implodes on itself. If we look at single-family homes, what do we see? Well, coming from 2008, we see a very different story. We see 1.8 million single-family homes. And then after the entire thing fell apart, that dropped to a low of about 390,000. We've only reached about 680,000 compared to the highs. And this equals, if we go back in time, somewhere around 1973. So this market has not improved whatsoever. And I'm talking about permits. This whole market is falling apart. They're blowing up the bubble. But the central bank can only do so much. Because when there's a real economy, the millions and millions of people are purchasing homes, want new homes. That's the real economy. So they can only do what they can possibly do, and they only can bring it up to the levels of 1973. The conventional housing recovery is now dead. Again, this is a central banker recovery. It's a bubble that they created. That's it. And this surge that we're seeing in rental units only happened in one place. That was the Northeast. Midwest, no. South, no. West, no. They concentrated in one area, and they took out the permits there, and they made it look like everything is fine. Again, these are just permits. This is not like, these are all the houses that are sold. So we can see right now, this whole thing is going to completely fall apart. Now, I see in the corporate media, they have a headline, retail sales forecast, something doesn't add up. And they're a little confused because when they're looking at retail sales and they're looking at the statistical numbers that the government put out, they realize these don't correlate in any way. Because the National Retail Federation is saying that back-to-school sales will drop by 9% this year. Well, wait a minute. Unemployment drops to 5.3%. People are buying houses like crazy. They're telling us that retail is bouncing back, and the National Retail Federation is saying that back to school sales, yeah, they're looking at a 9% drop. It's probably going to be worse than that. And they're saying this doesn't make sense. What's going on here? And they tried to explain it away that, oh, people are just not purchasing school supplies because they don't need as much anymore because of all the technology. Well, what's really happening is that people don't have jobs. People have part-time jobs. And I know because I'm doing this, you use the same things year after year because you don't want to spend the money because you don't have it and you don't want to go out and buy it again. So people are saying, you know something? Instead of throwing away the folders, let's use it again. How many pencils do we have left? How many pens do we have left? How many notebooks do we have left that we can just rip out the old pages and just use what we have? This is what people are doing right now. According to a separate report by Customer Growth Partners, they're saying that 50% of the working age adults have full-time jobs, sluggish growth in disposable income, which is dampening shoppers' appetites. Only 50% have full-time jobs. That means the other 50% either have part-time or no job whatsoever. Basically, they're saying the economy is broken. People do not have the money. That's what they're really saying here. And we can see that wage growth is non-existent in this recovery. Real wage growth slowed almost every month since its peak in January and now stands at 7-month lows. And now wage growth is declining once again. It's not improving. Now, the value of the dollar here in the U.S. is declining. We see inflation on food and other products, and people's wages are declining. This makes it very hard for people to actually go out and live. This is why people are running out of money when they reach like the third week into the month, because they just can't make it. And this is why the older population is going back to work, because their retirement, their fixed income, cannot keep up with what's going on here. I know they're telling us there is no inflation, but every time I go to the market, either products have shrunk down, they substituted ingredients, or the products have shrunk and they just have to raise the price after a certain period of time. This is what I'm seeing, and every time I go, the food bill shows it. Now, while the central bank, the U.S. government, is continually keeping us in this recovery theme, we know things are starting to fall apart for them. I mean, there are a lot of things that happened just in this year. I mean, think about it. 57 nations approved the China-led Asian Infrastructure Bank. They joined up. May 12, 2015, Russia asked Greece to join the BRICS alliance. May 24th, the Pentagon released documents to Judicial Watch, and they said, yes, the U.S. government played a central role in creating the Islamic State. June 4th, 2015, whistleblower Edward Snowden says, profound difference had occurred since releasing the NSA documents, and that the balance of power has shifted in our world. He is referring to the BRICS alliance. June 5th, 2015. There will be a reset of the financial industry. The International Monetary Fund says the Chinese yuan is no longer undervalued. This sets the stage for the yuan to be recognized as a global reserve. Something US dollar does not like. I should say, really, the U.S. government central bankers does not like. June 17, 2015, Russia and China announced that all natural gas and crude oil sales between the two countries will be done in the Chinese yuan, bypassing the dollar completely. June 17, 2015, the state of Texas has signed a bill. They want their gold back. June 17, 2015, Greece Parliament released a report stating that Greece owes this debt. It is completely illegal, illegitimate, odious. But of course, as we know, there was a referendum. The people voted no. And this shows the central bankers that the people are onto them. They understand what they're doing. This is a message to them. July 7th, 2015, the BRICS Bank officially opens for business. And then on July 8th, we had that strange New York Stock Exchange shut down. We had China's stock market completely falling apart. And we know the U.S. government central bankers will do whatever they have to do to destroy the economy of China, or make it look like the yuan or renminbi should not be a reserve currency. And we see the New York Stock Exchange that was shut down. Of course, they were out there saying it could have been a cyber attack, and of course that kind of fell away. And if it really was a cyber attack, believe me, it would be all over the corporate media. They'd be blaming China. They'd be blaming any group they can blame. But what I think happened, it was a backlash against what they were doing against China. People started to sell. They couldn't control it, and they threw the kill switch. And we can see all these events leading up. The central bankers are losing control. And I'm not even talking about the geopolitical events or the false flag events. We are seeing everything happen now. Things are accelerating. And everyone needs to be prepared. Everyone needs to be ready for this. Because how long do you think this system can continue on? Yes, from 2008 to now, it's gone quite a long time here. But again, why did it go so long? Well, it was for the central bankers of the U.S. government to get everything prepared for the collapse. It was for the Eurozone and those countries to get prepared for what is coming. And they have done this. They prepared themselves. And you need to prepare yourself. I mean, if you haven't been purchasing food, please purchase food. So, purchase water. Purchase medicines. If someone has diabetes or a heart problem, make sure you have extra medicine. Make sure you have toiletries. Make sure you have cash and gold. Make sure you are prepared, because let me tell you, the central bankers, the U.S. government, they have been preparing all this time. Now, if you just started listening or you haven't been preparing and you're worried, I would say, if you can, go to Costco, go to any of these stores and buy as much as you can. Or you can use other services. There is one called Life Reliance. That's lifereliance.com. They offer food storage. They offer water, bug out bags, seeds, 24-hour kits, first aid kits. You name it, they have it. And you can get everything all at once without going to all these different stores. But however you want to do this, you need to be prepared for it. Because just like in Greece, just like in Cyprus, this can hit at any moment, and you need to be ready. Just like you know the winter's coming. You don't know how cold it's going to be, but you know it's coming. You go out and you buy jackets, socks. You fill up your oil tank with extra oil. You make sure you are prepared for the winter. Well, we know this whole thing cannot be sustained. How can it? How possibly can it be sustained? I know all those people who continually write in, or the trolls are out there saying, oh, look, we haven't had a collapse. But you know what? All these people are going to disappear once it happens, because it always happens this way. Once it happens, these people completely disappear. They no longer comment on anything, because what are they going to comment on? Because the whole thing's falling apart, and you're left without being prepared. Listen, if you believe those people, then don't do anything. But if it happens and you're not prepared, you're going to be very sorry. Now, out in Ukraine, we understand it's been a year, And we know the Ukraine government officials are trying to put together a tribunal. They're not following the United Nations Security Council resolution whatsoever. And I can't believe this has gone on for a year already, but of course they don't want anything to be found out until they're ready to bring it up. Because why all of a sudden is there a big rush? Why? Because they need to blame the Southeastern people and Russia. This is why they're rushing right now to put it together. We see John Kerry out there saying that we support the work being done by the Joint Investigative Team and we back them and they have our full cooperation. Really? Then hand over all the satellite imagery, because we know the United States had satellites right above. We know NATO did. And I'm not talking about those black and white, grainy, blurry, photoshopped images from 1970, because that's what they do. They take the black and white, they zoom it out, they fuzz it up a little bit, then they add Photoshop and they draw lines all over it to convince you that something happened. Then hand over what is real. They're not going to do it. There's going to be no evidence, but they will come out blaming the Southeastern people and Russia. Why? Because they need it to start the next offensive. In Italy, they're saying there's no need to set up an international tribunal over the Malaysian Airlines MH17 crash. Why? Because Ukraine was in charge of where this plane flew. The Air Traffic Control Service is responsible for this. And they're absolutely right. They're the ones who told this one plane to fly in this direction. That's it. Why didn't all the other planes fly in this direction? Just the one. And what's funny is that at the same time, Putin's plane was flying in this area. And it looks very similar to the Malaysian airline. And of course, as we can see already, they're getting prepared with the propaganda. We understand when McCain was in Ukraine, he said, yes, Ukraine is going to deliver their own natural gas. They will not be dependent on Russia whatsoever. We know the gas was shut off July 1st. They're not receiving anything from Russia right now. How convenient. Of course, they're in the summer months right now. They really don't need it. They have their tanks filled up. And right now, America's Frontera Resource Corporation, along with Ukraine's gas company, they're going to build a liquefied natural gas terminal in Ukraine. They're going to look for different sources to supply Ukraine with natural gas, and they're going to bypass Russia completely. And we can see it right now. They're getting prepared because they don't want to be dependent on Russia while this war is going on. And this is why they are doing it. We see Victoria Nuland right now is out there saying, see, Ukraine is backing the constitutional amendment. They're following the Minsk agreement. And right now, she's speaking about things that really don't make any sense. Because when you look at the information here, they're not following the Minsk agreement. In the amendments, there is no special status for the Donbass region. They don't correspond to the Minsk agreement. And what they're talking about and what the Southeastern people are talking about are completely two different things. And Poroshenko said the changes have been agreed with representatives of Donetsk and Lugansk, and the representatives are saying, no one has ever talked to us whatsoever. Right now, in the agreement, it says the foreign policy and security issues would remain under the supervision of the central authorities of Ukraine. So right now, they're pretending they're following along with the Minsk II agreement. Now, Poroshenko was doing an interview, and he brought up something very interesting, and we can see the propaganda is continuing. And they're continually telling us that the Southeastern people and Russia, they're about to attack. What he said is that the Ukrainian Military Intelligence Service has warned that the aggressor in Donbass was ramping up its activity for a possible further invasion of Ukraine. He says, I do not believe in that, but I have confirmation from our intelligence sources that the Southeastern people and Russia will be mounting an offensive. And you can see right now they are building up the propaganda. They're trying to convince everyone that yes, they're going to be starting it, and we need to watch very closely in this area and watch for some type of an event. Now we see NATO right now, they're having another drill. It's called Trident Juncture 2015. This is a huge drill of about 36,000 personnel from 30 NATO and partner countries taking part in the exercise in Europe, Atlantic Ocean, Mediterranean, and North America. And all this is being done to fight the Islamic State. They're getting prepared and training to go into the Middle East. This is what the training is all about right now. And we know eventually what's going to happen is the forces from NATO, the U.S., will go into the Middle East. The United States government central bankers have been trying to push the authorization for war. It is dead in Congress, and this is why, and they know they will need an event to push this through. And this brings us to the Chattanooga attack, where Marines were gunned down. Now, when these events occur, it doesn't mean that people don't die. I mean, look at 9/11. People died in 9/11. Some events, they're completely staged. Some people will die, and they're still staged. It doesn't mean they're not staged. And when we look at this, we see that, yeah, things are not making sense. And we're seeing that they've released the names of those people that were gunned down. Gunnery Sergeant Thomas J. Sullivan, Staff Sergeant David Wyatt, Sergeant Carson Holmquist, and Lance Corporal Skip Wells. My condolences go out to their families. But when we look at this, what are we seeing here? We see this shooter, Abdullah Aziz, has not been on the radar of the federal law enforcement before Thursday's shooting. His father was investigated about several years ago, possible ties to foreign terrorist organizations, and he was added to the U.S. terrorist watch list, according to the report of the New York Times. So right now, there's no real information here that ties him to any type of terrorist activity or organization. But of course, the corporate media was out there, and we see them saying, yes, it is domestic terrorism. They're part of the Islamic State. And the FBI is out there saying, no, this is not part of any type of terrorist organization at this point. But what we see happening here is there are many agendas. They're not just one. And I think everyone's jumping on the bandwagon here. We see the gun grabbers on one hand. They're pushing their agenda. Then we see the war fearmongers pushing their agenda. Because as we know, the authorization for war is pending in Congress, and they need that passed. And they need to scare the people. But these two agendas seem to be overlapping each other. And when we look at this, we see the information about, oh, he was part of the Islamic State. He is a terrorist. He went to Jordan. He was gone for many months. And this is coming, a lot of it, from Rita Katz, Pamela Geller. And whenever they're involved, we know this is a complete made-up event that they put together or someone else put together, and they're just pushing the propaganda. Then we have the gun grabbers out there pushing their agenda. See, weapons are bad, they're dangerous, people shouldn't have them. But when we look at the situation, and we're going to look at it a little bit closer, we see that this was set up in a free gun zone. I mean, from the picture on the door, you see that no guns allowed. And it seems that all these shootings seem to basically happen in an area where there's no guns allowed. They never really occur where people are packing, if you notice. Now, the FBI came out and said the shooter was wearing a vest that allowed him to carry extra gun ammunition. So already you can see already that they introduced a bill making it illegal to wear a bulletproof vest, and I'm sure they're going to introduce a bill saying that people cannot wear the vests where you can carry extra ammunition. You see where this is headed right now. And the gun control groups came right out, and you know this is a a false flag event when the corporate media, the president, they come out right off the bat. They make their remarks. They know everything about what's going on. And this is exactly what we're seeing right now. And the gun grabbers are saying that this is terrible. Guns are dangerous. We need more legislation. And they keep up bringing on, they continue with their statistics of how many people died and from guns. And if we really look at it, the FBI crime statistics for those of 2013, the nation saw 8,454 homicides by firearms. But what they don't tell you is that most of this is not from legally owned firearms. This is from the black market, from crime, from gangs. And this is about 23 people per day. And the figures has declined each year since 2009, despite the growing population. And there was a recent report out there that those veterans who are on the waiting list to be seen by doctors to get medical treatment, there are over 800,000 of them. While they were waiting, over 200,000 passed away. So which is more dangerous? I mean, I know they like throwing around statistics, but they don't take them and show you what's really going on here. They don't separate them to say, oh, it wasn't the illegal guns. It was gang members. It was actually shootings by police. They don't like to tell you that. But during this whole time, what we're seeing is there are other agendas going on. Democrats right now are pushing for new executive orders that will allow the president to delay and suspend gun purchases indefinitely. So the person behind the Charleston gun shooting, he was able to buy a gun because the FBI dropped the ball with the background check. So he had a criminal record. He went to buy a gun. And for some reason, the FBI let him. Well, we know why that is. Because, he was arrested for drug possession. And he should have been flagged. But of course, the FBI messed it up somehow. Currently, the law says that if the FBI can't find a reason to deny a gun purchase after 3 days, the licensed gun dealer is allowed to release the firearm to the purchaser. So, and basically, if they don't come back with anything, they can give the person the gun. So what are they trying to do right now? They're trying to close that loophole. They are pushing for Obama to lift the 3-day limit on gun background checks. Now, how are they going to do this? They're trying to do it with an executive order. So if the federal agents don't get back to anyone within 3 days, you just can't have a gun, and this could go on indefinitely. And he wants to push the agenda by issuing an executive order. He wants to bypass Congress on this. And he wants to change the law. This is what they're trying to do right now. This is why we saw the Charleston shooting. This is why we see another shooting. But these agendas right now are conflicting with each other. And when we look closely at this, they're saying the suspect car, ran into a fence. And when you look at the picture, there's no damage to the car whatsoever. No smashed in headlight, no scratches, no dents, nothing. The car is in perfect shape, which is kind of strange. We also have a picture of the man laying on the ground. But there's no blood again. And it looks like a jumpsuit, which is stuffed with something, and it's flattened. So that looks kind of odd right there. But let's say we believe the official story. Let's say we're going along with this, that the shooter was out there. He went to a gun-free zone. We know the father was investigated. He shot unarmed people. The shooter again is dead. And right now we see the corporate media continually pushing this story. And Obama came right on the air to make his remarks. It's like a completely step-by-step process that they use. Now, the gun control groups are telling us that everyone needs to be disarmed so everyone is safe. So the gun control folks are telling us that in a gun-free zone, we need to get rid of the guns. Well, we see what happens in the gun-free zone. No one had a gun. And the shooter, let's believe the official story, had a gun. It didn't turn out too well for those people. The war agenda folks that are trying to push their agenda to get the authorization for war passed and to make us believe that the Islamic State is in this country, they're saying they're coming for us. Well, if they're coming for us, shouldn't every American be armed to protect themselves? Shouldn't everyone be packing some type of weapon to make sure their family doesn't get hurt? Think about it. If those Marines had weapons, do you think that shooter would be living today? Or do you think all of them would have pulled their weapons and that man would have been dead on the spot? So, let's see right now. The NSA, CIA, DHS, again, with all their spying on American people, with all their programs they have running, and now, of course, the FBI wants us to get rid of encryption, they had nothing whatsoever. They couldn't protect us once again. They, if you believe the original, their version of the story, they're never going to protect you. The only one to protect you is you. So right now, that agenda is basically conflicting with the gun grabber agenda. And we're having two things here colliding. Because one is telling you that the Islamic State is coming, be very afraid. The other is telling you that people don't have to have guns because guns are bad. So if you look at these two things, they conflict with each other, because if everyone is going to believe one side that the Islamic State is coming, then everyone has to be armed. If everyone's going to be armed, the gun grabbers can't make their case. So they have Congress, which is controlled by other foreign entities, other countries, pushing their agenda. And then we have the Obama administration, controlled by the central bankers, with their agenda. And both of them are hitting each other, and both of them do not make sense. So we can see at this point in time, from the evidence that we've been looking at here, all of it doesn't make sense. Again, we have a situation here where they're trying to scare the people. And both sides are fighting with each other right now. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.